Afternoon, everyone. Approximately a year ago, Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States of America. And he indicated that he was going to bring about a golden age in this great country. What Donald Trump and the Republicans have done as a result of their toxic, extreme policies is bring about a rotten age in the United States of America. The largest cut to Medicaid in American history, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers closing as a result of the Republican One Big Ugly Bill. Republicans are refusing to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and that's going to create a situation where tens of millions of everyday Americans will be unable to go see a doctor when they need one because their premiums are skyrocketing out of control, in some instances increasing by $1,000 or $2,000 per month. The Trump tariffs are making life more expensive for tens of millions of working class Americans. And the Trump administration has unleashed these lawless, masked ICE agents to brutalize American citizens, even resulting in the unjustified killing of 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. 1 year later, the Trump administration has been a complete and total failure, and the American people know it. And Republicans haven't done a damn thing to make life better for working class Americans, everyday Americans, and middle class Americans. Despite promising that costs were going to go down on day one, costs haven't gone down in the United States of America. With Republican control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, costs have gone up. Inflation skyrocketing out of control. Housing costs out of control. Grocery costs out of control. Utility bills out of control. Child care costs out of control. And health care costs out of control. Everyday Americans are suffering under the oppressive nature of the Trump Republican economy. And it's time for some congressional action to actually keep your word as Republicans based on what you said you would do, which is to focus on addressing the high cost of living in this country. Instead, Republicans have consistently focused on rewarding their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks, and then engaging out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the largest pay-to-play scheme in the history of the country. It's disgusting, and the American people know it. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Today, Congressman Banadar said that he plans to introduce legislation to abolish ICE. How comfortable are you with members of your party pushing this?
Haven't had a conversation with the congressman on that particular piece of legislation, but our position has been clear that taxpayer dollars are being used by the Department of Homeland Security and ICE to brutalize American citizens and law-abiding American taxpayers in ways that the American people reject. The American people didn't sign up for what we're seeing on the streets of Minneapolis, in Chicagoland, or in other parts of the country. The American people thought that the Trump administration was going to target violent felons who are here in the country illegally. But instead, we see American citizens like Renee Nicole Good being gunned down in cold blood without justification. Taxpayer dollars are being used by the Department of Homeland Security and ICE to unleash extremism on the streets of America by individuals who are showing depraved indifference to human life. That's what we're seeing. That's what the American people are seeing. And the American people don't want their taxpayer dollars used in that fashion. And so as we approach the appropriations process related to Homeland Security funding, Democrats in the House and the Senate have demanded changes to the way in which ICE conducts itself, such that it falls into line with the standards, protocols, and behavior of every other law enforcement agency in the United States of America. ICE cannot conduct itself as if it's above the law. In America, no one is above the law. And these claims of absolute immunity are insane, absurd, and completely unfounded in law or in fact.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. So the Supreme Court today effectively gave candidates the right to sue to challenge voting laws that they disagree with. Considering how Republicans have continuously called for election reform, do you have any concerns that there could be a flurry of lawsuits brought by Republicans ahead of 2026, ahead of the 2026 midterms, challenging voting laws in different states?
We're assuming that Republicans are going to do everything possible to prevent a free and fair election from taking place in November of 2026. Why? Because Republicans know that if a free and fair election takes place, they're losing. In fact, Republicans are going to get routed all across the country, as we've repeatedly seen, including most recently in the off-year election in November and in the mayoral election in Miami, where a Democrat was elected in early December for the first time in almost 30 years. The whole reason why Republicans launched this failed gerrymandering scheme is because they know what we know. The American people are rejecting their extremism and embracing the Democratic vision for making life more affordable for everyday Americans. And so it's clear to me that though their gerrymandering scheme is crashing and burning, despite all the skeptics out there who thought that Democrats in the House were cooked somehow, as if we were going to step back. No, we didn't step back, we fought back. And they started this gerrymandering war. We're going to end it. And we're not going to allow Republicans to artificially maintain their majority in the House of Representatives. We're going to show up and stand up and speak up continuously for free and fair elections, and that's what the American people are going to get on November 3rd, 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Since the House passed the 3-year ACA extension, you called on Jonathan to, quote, stop playing procedural games that are jeopardizing the health, the safety, and the well-being of the American people. You said that there's a majority of votes in the Senate if the bill got to the floor. Are you calling for the Senate to get rid of the filibuster to bring forward this bill, since you say that it has the votes to pass if it made it to the floor?
The American people overwhelmingly support an extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. The House has passed, in a bipartisan way, legislation to make sure that those tax credits are restored for tens of millions of Americans, working class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans who otherwise will be unable to go see a doctor when they need one. And these are in states all across the country, and disproportionately, red states will be the ones impacted by the failure to restore the Affordable Care Act tax credits. That's the reality. We're talking about states like West Virginia, Wyoming, Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, South Carolina, Texas, Alabama. These are the states that are adversely impacted, right at the top of the list. So this fight for us is not a partisan one, it's a patriotic one. We're standing up for everyday Americans. It's not red or blue, it's red, white, and blue, as far as we're concerned, in terms of the fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And the reality in the Senate is that a majority of senators, 47 Democrats and 4 Republicans, support a straightforward extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which means that the only thing standing in the way is that John Thune and Senate Republicans are hiding behind the filibuster to erect procedural hurdles to prevent the bill from being voted on in an up or down way. And I'll leave it to the Senate to decide, and my Democratic colleagues, in terms of how to best deal with that procedural hurdle at this point in time. But I've been on record for years now saying that things have to change in that institution if we are going to effectively deliver for the American people. Thanks. Got it?
Where are you on the stock ban bill, and what would you say to some in your conference who have argued that it doesn't go far enough, it allows for loopholes for members to still continue to trade despite the intention behind the bill?
There are several challenges with the bill as it's currently written, which is why Democrats strongly opposed it in the hearing and markup today. The so-called stock ban doesn't ban stocks. Let's start there. That's a problem as it relates to any meaningful prohibition on trading. The bill also doesn't apply to the president or vice president, which any reasonable American can conclude that if we're going to prohibit stock trading related to people who occupy positions of significance in their federal government, of course, the president and the vice president should be included. And third, this is not the only challenge, but the so-called stock ban bill is riddled with loopholes that you can drive a flying palace through. That's ridiculous. It's pretending to do something that is not taking place. And the American people are correctly demanding that Congress take decisive action as it relates to banning congressional stock trading, so there can be some confidence that their representatives in the People's House are conducting themselves solely with the public interest in mind, not their own personal interests. So if the legislation comes to the floor, we'll have a caucus meeting to discuss it and then stake out a position thereafter. But as of the moment, the words, actions, and votes of the Democratic members of the House Administration Committee speak for themselves. Thanks.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries. Since we last talked to you on Monday, there have been a growing number of House Democrats calling for ICE to be abolished. I'm curious, where do you stand on the issue personally? Do you believe ICE should be abolished?
Same answer that I just gave to that question earlier in this press conference. Kevin?
On the Epstein files front, we're about a month out from the deadline that was imposed as part of the law. Have you kind of decided on a best approach that Democrats can take here? Are you behind the inherent contempt push that Khan and Massey have kind of rolled out?
Here's the thing with respect to the Epstein files. Congress decisively and overwhelmingly passed legislation signed into law by the current president requiring the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files so that there can be transparency and accountability, which has correctly been demanded by the courageous, brave survivors of Epstein's horrific abuse. That's the law of the land. But the Department of Justice, led by the current Attorney General, have failed to comply with the law. And it certainly is reasonable that contempt resolutions should be considered, directed at the Department of Justice, if they refuse to comply with a law that on its face requires the disclosure and release of millions of documents that they are currently hiding from the American people. I think to date they've released about 13,000, but they're hiding millions of documents. The American people deserve the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And it's interesting to me that if contempt of Congress should be considered for anyone, let's start with the Department of Justice. If the Republicans on the oversight committee were serious, that's where they would start. You have an actual law signed by the president, overwhelmingly passed by the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, that is being actively flouted by members of this administration. You want to consider contempt for anyone? Start there. Otherwise, it's hard to take any efforts coming out of House Oversight Committee Republicans seriously. Thanks.
Congressman Crow said today that he and other Democrats who were part of that Don't Give Up Push It video in November have been contacted by the DOJ since then. How are you counseling those folks about handling the outreach? Do you think they should cooperate with DOJ?
Well, that's going to be a decision made between the members of Congress and their legal representation. We're going to make sure that they have the highest quality legal representation. We stand firmly behind them. They did nothing wrong. These members of Congress did not violate the law, and the Department of Justice continues to weaponize the criminal justice system to go after people who express dissent or stand up against the extremism and corruption of the Trump administration. Here's the thing. Let's be clear to the Department of Justice. You're not intimidating any of us. None of us are intimidated by your actions. The Department of Justice is filled with unqualified political hacks. You're not intimidating members of the House or the Senate on the Democratic side. Your efforts are futile and will be defeated, as has been the case with the attempt to weaponize charges against my own Attorney General, Tish James, where Americans now are saying enough with these phony, fake, and fraudulent charges. So we'll handle each of these situations as they emerge. But clearly the intention from the beginning of this administration last year was that they were going to try to steamroll Democrats in the House and the Senate, steamroll the American people. It has not happened. Republicans are the ones who are being steamrolled electorally. And here in the House of Representatives, they can't even legislate. This group of people, they don't know how to organize a two-car funeral. They're losing votes week after week after week. The whole thing is falling apart. And so the notion that we're going to be intimidated by these toxic people who the American people are rejecting, these toxic people in the administration, it's not going to happen. Has not happened, will not happen, ever.
On the appropriations, you said you want to have some provision on ICE. Do you have any more details on how they could be made to conduct themselves like other law enforcement agencies?
Well, there are a variety of different things that clearly should be done. No other agency is running around communities in the United States of America being masked up. ICE agents should not be masked up. Every other law enforcement agency, when they execute upon their mission, have warrant requirements. ICE should have warrant requirements. Back home in New York City, New York's finest, the NYPD, best law enforcement agency in the world, they all have to wear body cameras, as is the case with police departments and law enforcement agencies all over the country. ICE should be required to wear body cameras. Law enforcement agencies all across the country have policies that limit their ability to storm hospitals, schools, or houses of worship. ICE shouldn't be able to storm hospitals, schools, or houses of worship. There are a variety of different things that can be done that we have put on the table and will continue to put on the table to get ICE under control so that they are actually conducting themselves like every other law enforcement agency in the country, as opposed to operating as if they're above the law, somehow thinking they've got absolute immunity. They don't have absolute immunity. Supreme Court granted immunity, unfortunately, to one person, the President of the United States of America. It's one of the reasons why we've seen this extremism consistently unleashed on the American people, but it doesn't apply to anybody else. So every single one of these people who we see brutalizing the American people, they're going to be held accountable one way or the other, accordance with the law. And the statute of limitations, this is for every single member of the Trump administration, is 5 years. Donald Trump will be long gone. Left 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Statute of limitations will be alive and well. And there'll be a lot of people in this country, patriotic people, determined to make sure those who broke the law with impunity during the Trump administration are held accountable.
Will you vote no if you don't get those things?
The bill related to Homeland Security funding that was currently scheduled to be on the House floor this week is not on the House floor because it doesn't have Democratic support. So you're going to have to ask House Republicans what they plan to do relative to funding in this particular area if they continue to take a my way or the highway approach.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter. Representative Ilhan Omar has repeatedly dismissed the $9 billion Minnesota fraud figure, but numerous people, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Minnesota representatives in the state, Chairman Comer, amongst others, have confirmed this number is indeed correct and see it as one of the largest frauds in U.S. history. Do you acknowledge that this $9 billion figure is accurate? And also, what do you make of the Minnesota House introducing resolutions to impeach Governor Tim Walz?
Well, I'm unfamiliar with resolutions having been introduced relative to the impeachment of Tim Walz. I assume that's some extreme MAGA Republican who has done it, so I don't take that effort seriously. And if you're citing James Comer as a source for me, you better start someplace else, because he's not an individual that has any credibility, as far as I'm concerned, relative to the allegations that he's made. If James Comer wants to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse, start with the Trump administration. Go look into your organized crime boss who's running pay-to-play schemes all across the country, shaking down corporations and individuals, launching retribution efforts against American citizens who disagree with him. That's the behavior of an organized crime boss. And taxpayer dollars are being used to run this toxic scheme. If James Comer is serious about waste, fraud, and abuse, go investigate what's coming out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the Trump White House. Now, as it relates to the allegations that have been raised in Minnesota, there are active investigations being run by state and local authorities who actually do have credibility to uncover the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Follow the facts, apply the law, and let the chips fall where they may. Thanks.
Thank you, Leader. As more and more members of your caucus call for ICE to be abolished, how do you feel that will impact Democrats who are in swing districts?
Listen, House Democrats are going to take the majority back in November. Donald Trump knows it. Republicans know it. We know it. And the only question at this point in time is by how much? We're going to continue to fight hard to make life better for the American people. Lower the high cost of living. Fix our broken health care system. Make life more affordable. Clean up the corruption that is preventing us from delivering a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the difference between Democrats and Republicans at this point is very clear. The contrast is very clear. And voters are reacting to that all across the country, not just Democrats. Independents, swing voters, and traditional Republicans are recoiling at what they are seeing from the Republican Party. And what unifies Democrats is a focus on making life more affordable for the American people. Thanks, everyone.